All right, we're getting where the two of the ISIS recruits, we're told, are going to show up at this Brooklyn courthouse. I believe I had said Lower Manhattan before. I apologize for that. At this Brooklyn courthouse. The other was already arraigned in Jacksonville, Florida. Of course, by now you've heard that their intent was to do God knows what here, kind of the stuff that you've been seeing ISIS pull off over there. The EU Parliament member Nigel Farage is a rising star in British politics. In fact, he's a big star now at CPAC. I believe he's the first British invite to that conservative group they've ever had. He joins us right now. Nigel, what do you make of this? This was a close one here.
Wholly unsurprising. You know, I've been saying this for years. What we've done is we've allowed, through a deliberate policy of multiculturalism, because we want to show the world what lovely people we are, and we've allowed different communities to develop a different culture within, you know, what ought to be a Judeo-Christian culture. I mean, in the case of my country, our constitution, you know, makes it perfectly clear that is what we are as a country. And whilst we want to be tolerant of other religions and other minorities, they've got to understand the law of the land in our country. We've lost sight of that, and you know, we've seen Paris, we've seen events in parts of Belgium, now these arrests here in New York City today. This isn't going away in a hurry, and we're going to have to get very much more robust. You've
seen it certainly in your country. We, of course, saw it very, very strongly in this country and on 9/11. But a lot of people have forgotten, Nigel. They're not as on guard about it, and they look at the atrocities abroad with the beheadings and, you know, burning pilots alive in a cage, and they think, well, that's over there. It's not over here.
No, it isn't over there. I mean, look, we've just had them last week, 3 15-year-old girls leave their school during the half-term holidays, fly to Turkey, and go over the border into Syria to join up with ISIS.
What would attract women, of all, to go to groups like this?
It's interesting. Young men appear to be being radicalised, and they're leaving Britain and other European countries, and some Americans too, and going to join ISIS. It seems with the young women, they're effectively being groomed online. They're being told what a wonderful, pure, fantastic life for women it is living under ISIS. I mean, I can't think of anything more appalling, personally. So this is, yeah, don't think it's over there.
But they all use these social media sites, right? Now, yes. in the case of at least 2 of the men that they apprehended here, they were aggressively using these Uzbekian sites, so language that we're not familiar with. But obviously we got them. But it reminded me that we should widen our net here to include sites like this.
Oh, look, our intelligence services, I mean, we today have got to put more faith in our intelligence services than ever.
Well, they did a good job here. It helped that the one of them was a bit of an idiot to just be so graphic about his intentions.
Yeah, the trouble is, though, of course, that from the perspective of the terrorist, they only have to get through once.
You're right.
And that is the big problem. So, I mean, I'm all for us spending more money on intelligence services. You know, this is the only way we're going to stop these atrocities. But longer term, you know, there is a cultural issue here. We've got to be more assertive. We've got to be more self-confident about who we are.
All right. Now, a lot we don't know about these 3 guys. They might be Muslim by religion, but maybe not practicing Muslims or even that emphatic about it. They certainly are sympathetic to ISIS. So how does the culturalism issue come in there when you have someone who's Muslim by name, not really practicing, just sick?
Well, look, that can happen to all religions, and
right.
You know, let's not think terrorism is new.
So how would that strategy of yours to watch out for multiculturalism abuses find guys like this?
Well, I mean, I think the problem in the USA is far less than it is in Britain. Take the mosques in Britain. The mosques in Britain have been infiltrated by a series of preachers, funded with big money, coming out of parts of the Middle East, and saying things in mosques that if I said in the streets of London or you said in the streets of New York, we'd be arrested for pretty blooming quickly.
Well, what do they do in Britain when this happens?
Well, we've been turning a blind eye. We've been turning a blind eye for a very long time. We've turned a blind eye to what's been said.
But your leaders, and you especially, have freely mentioned in terms of Muslim extremists, radicalized Islam.
Yeah.
Not here.
I mean, we've seen social issues too. I mean, the last time I was here, we were talking about a northern town called Rotherham, you know, in which 1,500 young girls were systematically sexually abused and raped. And the reason we didn't deal with it earlier is the police and the authorities were frightened that because the perpetrators were were predominantly Pakistani Muslim men, that if they said anything about it, they might get called racist. So we've been frightened of our own shadows.
Do you think less so now, given these tragic incidents?
Well, I would like to think that we are waking up and we are beginning to stand up for our values and our morality, but I'm not absolutely certain of it, because, as you say, a few months goes by without an atrocity, the general public forget, and it allows our political class to slip back into that malaise that has got us to where we are.
Now, to our president, and to a lesser degree your prime minister, have been trying to step back and say ISIS is a clear terrorist, problematic group, but don't equate them to the level, let's say, we did with the Nazis, or we did during World War II. More or less, our president's saying in this country, if it bleeds, it leads. That's why it gets the attention and the media does. What do you think of that?
Well, the Nazis were a relatively easy enemy. We could see them. They had uniforms, they had flags, we knew exactly where they were. Terribly difficult enemy to beat and a massive cost to do it. But when you know who the enemy is and you can see them, you know, life is much easier. But
I think you had also said that if we knew what they could do early on, we could have saved ourselves a lot of trouble. We're referring to the Nazis then. Well, here we know what they're already doing.
Well, certainly if we hadn't appeased in 1936, maybe, you know, many tens of millions of lives
perhaps could have been saved. Are we appeasing here? Are we
well, we have been appeasing. I don't think we've thought through the ISIS problem. They're not easy to identify. They are spread now right across that region. Militarily, the only way to beat them, we can provide expertise, we can provide help, but it's not British and American boots that are going to beat this. We've got to work with all those Arab and African states together.
Well, they're in there. A couple of United Arab Emirates now and then, you know, flying planes at least now, sorties over Syrian compounds and the rest. You have Jordan, of course, doing the same. Egypt, its leader, has been bashing these extremist groups. Is that enough?
We're in for a long battle here.
But you're saying England shouldn't have boots on the ground.
I think that what we've done over the course of the last 15 years, both us and you, the Americans, by having boots on the ground in Afghanistan, in Iraq, has actually made feelings against us even stronger. Provide expertise, provide help, but to beat this, we're going to need the Nigerian army and the Kenyan army and all those different countries.
But what if those armies don't come forward?
Then we have an even bigger problem. But I think they will come forward.
Because I had John McCain and others where you're sitting are saying, well, we're going to have to entertain at least some boots on the ground.
How many?
I don't know.
How many hundreds of thousands of men would it take?
So that, you argue, would be a waste of time.
I think the problem's too big.
So when you address CPAC,
and
all these conservatives saying we got to get tough.
I'm going to say,
what does that mean?
I'm going to say, let's have a think. You know, we bombed Libya 4 years ago. We've made Libya worse. We've now made Libya a country in which it's impossible to live as a Christian. Let's think carefully before we get involved in complicated military and social issues. This ISIS threat across that whole region, it is a real, genuine evil. It won't be beaten by conventional warfare in a short space of time.
Nigel Farage, thank you very much. Very good seeing you in the flesh.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, questions for Washington as illegals go nowhere. This father wants to know why we can't at least get ones with a criminal record out of here.
He was released from the county jail the day before he executed my son. Why was this violent illegal alien allowed to walk the streets of America instead of being deported?